12 o'clock, and we want to thank everybody for coming. We see that people are starting to log on, so that's awesome. And we're just going to wait till we're sure everybody's had a chance to join us. And while we're doing that, why don't you put in your chat box well, first of all, guys, pull up your chat boxes and your Q&A. And why don't you put in the chat box where you guys are from? Welcome. And we'll just wait a minute or two more to get started.
Jenna has come on the chat box. Jenna, where are you from? Oh, and Martin. Hi, Martin, joining from Ann Arbor.
Wow.
Oh, well, you're not in Brooklyn anymore? Did you move? I've been living on the U.S. for about 10 years, originally from Long Island. Welcome, Jenna. So glad you made it. I know that you are friends with Teresa and Thomas. Okay, Martin left Brooklyn during the crisis. Oh, good for you. It must have been nice to get out of the city. Yes.
Oops.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Aiming to come back soon. Yes, I hope so. Ari Brown is signed in. New York City, but currently in West Hartford.
Great.
Oh, Ari, Molly's husband. Oh, did you just register? We didn't see Ari on there. I'm so happy you guys came. Is Molly there with you?
And now we have Maria. Maria just joined us. Welcome, Maria. So we're just going to wait 2 more minutes as people are logging in.
What time is it?
And then we'll get started. Maria, we're asking everybody to let us know where everybody's from.
So it's nice to see that people, it looks like most people were able to get out of the city during the crisis and go to other places. I know that that's probably safer and you're probably more comfortable.
For sure.
Okay.
It's a long haul. I bet none of us thought we'd still be wherever we are for such a long time.
Yeah, at least we're learning new things, Jen. We're doing a webinar today because of the crisis. So
that's right. So actually, we can just go ahead and get started, I think.
Signed on.
So listen, my name is Jennifer Meyer, and I'm here with.
Hi, I'm Laura Clemente. I'm so glad you guys could make it.
Great, and we just want to say thank you so much for joining us today for the home buying seminar. We're both coming to you from our homes. And certainly we've learned during this stay-at-home time that home is the most important thing. And I think we're hearing that 40% of urbanites are considering moving out to the suburbs at this time. So it's been a long haul and we're learning a lot about what's important to us. And so that's why we decided to have this home buying seminar today.
Yes, I think that you're probably curious with COVID-19 and all the new rules and restrictions. If you were ready to start the home buying process, how would you go about that during this time if you don't even think you're able to go inside a house and look at it? And we're going to review the entire home buying process. We're going to include the COVID rules and hopefully answer all of your questions. Jen, you want to get started?
Sure.
Okay. So the beginning of it's a very exciting decision when you know that you're ready to move and buy a new home and you wonder, where do you begin? Most people today probably begin in Zillow. They go on their computer and they start daydreaming and looking at beautiful houses. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fun to do. But the first step your realtor should tell you to do is to obtain your pre-approval, because you really want to know how much you can afford. So how much you can afford, including the taxes, and what are the tax rates in the communities that you're looking at. So where do you start? You start at your bank. You can go to the bank that you regularly go to. You can shop different pre-approval opportunities online. You can find a mortgage broker that you want to work with. And whoever you decide to obtain your pre-approval from will ask you a series of questions. They will run your credit report. And when you are done with that process, you'll have a pretty good idea of how much you can afford. But then you have to consider the taxes. So In Westchester County, in southern Westchester, there's quite a range of taxes depending if the town is smaller in a village or depending if it's a city like Rye or Eastchester, where it's a bigger city and the taxes are lower. So what you'll want to tell your banker or mortgage broker is a tax range. So let's use a whole number. Let's say you were looking for a home that was $1 million. The range of taxes in southern Westchester are about $15,000 to $30,000. So you'll ask your banker to give you a pre-approval using 15,000, 20, 25, 30, and they'll be able to tell you what your monthly payment will be based on that tax rate. And it will give you a really clear picture of how much you can afford moving forward. And then we could go to the next slide, and we're ready to dream about what are we looking for. We're ready to make our wish list. So we're going to start with the community and the lifestyle that might meet your needs. We talked about the taxes, and you might want to base your community and on the different tax rates. But you'll make a list. Start a list of towns you've always wanted to live in. Start to think about if you want to live in a small town, if you like the feel, if you want the graduating class size in the high school to be under a certain number. That will help guide you. Then you start thinking about the actual house, the home specifications. What style home? Have you always dreamed about a center hall colonial or an English Tudor? Make that the top of your list. Then the obvious, how many bedrooms do you need? Do you have a big family? Do you have a lot of people that visit from out of town? Figure out how many bedrooms you want, how many bathrooms. Have you always wanted a really big backyard? Is it important that the house is fully renovated, or are you a person that's not afraid to do work? You're willing to do the work on the house. Do you need a garage? Do you need a finished basement? So you write down all of the things that are really important to you. Do you work in the city? Do you want to be walked to a train station? That's a very important detail, especially in southern Westchester. Homes tend to be a little more expensive when you can walk to the train. So you might want to start thinking about things that are a trade-off for you. When you make your list of priorities, put it in order of what's a deal breaker and what's not a deal breaker. A couple of weeks ago, a young couple that I've been working with gave me their wish list. Now, the husband's wish list, the top of it was walk to train. It really was important to him. His wife really wanted a pool. She's always wanted a pool. She wanted it to have a pool house, turn into a guest house for her family that visits from far away. We've been looking for about 6 months. We find their dream house. Literally, it checked every box on their wish list except for it was not walk to train. He thought that was the top of his list, but after going through the process, he realized this was his dream house. He just would have to take an Uber or get a parking space, and he ended up deciding to let that go. He wasn't going to be walk to train because he was going to have the home of his dreams. So that's an example of a trade-off. So Jen, why don't you go to the next slide? What happens after you make your wish list?
So that's when you begin your search. So, as Laura mentioned, maybe you've been on Zillow, you started putting your wish list together, and it's time to research the communities in more depth. So there are some tools for buyers right in your home to start doing that. We always start people with what's important to you. Again, what do you do for fun? That's another very important thing to think about as you're starting to research your communities. Are schools important to you? Activities that you're involved with, whether that be, a wide range of those, obviously, and commute. So we suggest people start with greatschools.org, niche.com. You guys can be writing these down. Or we also like to start with the Metro North map. That's a great resource. There are 3 train lines that go through Westchester County, one on the Hudson River side, one in the middle of the county, and then one along I-95 on the Long Island Sound. So if you just use the Metro North map, that's very helpful. You can see how far each community is from Grand Central, if that's where you're headed, or if you're headed up north to Connecticut. And of course, Google Maps are very helpful. So now you're armed with your information, you've done a little research on the communities, and that's when you're going to reach out to your realtor and narrow down a couple communities and ask for a personal tour. And these personal tours are so helpful because you know, it's one thing to see things on paper, and it's a whole nother thing to see it in person. So in times of coronavirus, you know, people are probably wondering, well, how do you do a tour? Well, just as we always usually do. Usually we'll have the realtor in one car and then the buyers in another car, for a variety of reasons. Perhaps they have a lot of stuff with them, or they have children, or whatever the case may be. So we do what's called a Bluetooth tour. And that is so helpful because you can actually see, do you like the style of the homes in the neighborhoods that you think you like? You can see what the schools look like in the downtown, and just kind of get a feel for the community, which is really, really helpful. And then you get to do the showings. So a lot of times that's in conjunction with your community tour. Just a heads up, looking at houses is exhausting. So, you know, you want to definitely, sorry, Laura, go ahead.
I said, but fun.
But oh, it's so fun. So you certainly don't want to, you know, do a 9-to-5 thing. I think that's a long day. But so you'll tour your communities and you'll pick 4 or 5 homes in each of the communities to take a look at. And as you're going through, it's really helpful. Do you like to see, you'll be able to see, are the neighboring houses attractive? Is the house well maintained on the outside and on the inside? And is there great light? And does the house meet your wish list that you'd put together? And maybe then you're starting to see that maybe some of the things on your wish list aren't as important when you're touring the homes in person than you thought. So all of that is really a fun and helpful process. I always recommend buyers take notes those days, because as you get home, you kind of forget a few things. So, you know, it's great to keep your notes as you're going along, and your realtor will give you listing sheets on each of the properties that you're going to see. And then finally, you're going to be able to narrow down to some finalists, and maybe 1 or 2 that are your top choices. And so at that point, your realtor is going to give you what's called a comparative market analysis of the properties that are in the immediate area of the homes that you're interested in. And that's going to include listing sheets for all the active properties, the pending properties or in contract properties, and the ones that have recently sold, which we call market proven. And so that's all going to be information you're going to look at as you prepare to get ready to make an offer.
Thank you, Jen. So you found the house that you were ready to possibly place an offer. As Jen said, your realtor is going to be giving you a market analysis of homes that have sold in the past year in the neighborhood. Sometimes you can even find houses that sold right on the same street, which is really helpful because you want to know what is the market value today for that home. It's very important to compare apples to apples. You want to choose homes that have very similar square footage, same amount of bedrooms if you can, same condition. Condition is so important in today's market. People are paying a premium if a house is in good condition. I think it's from all the home improvement TV shows that people are watching.
For sure.
They don't want to, they don't want to go into a house and it's not going to look ready, most people. So this is very important when you're looking at the comps. So you're going to take those comps, compare to the pictures. I'm going to send you, your realtor should send you the MLS sheet, which has the photographs and the facts about the house. Now compare the house that you're looking at to the pictures. Okay, you get it. And prepare an offer. This is where your realtor is going to really be very helpful with her experience. And you're going to prepare an offer. You don't want to go, you probably don't want to lowball an offer if this house is in really good condition. You want it to be fair so that you can engage the seller, hopefully get a counter. And the terms, the terms are very important. It's not just about the price. What are the contingencies? Are you getting a mortgage or is this a cash offer? If you're getting a mortgage, what percentage are you able to put down? The higher the percentage, the stronger the offer. The average is 20% in Southern Westchester. It's not to say you couldn't put a lower percentage, but the average is 20%. Are you flexible on your closing date? Can you accommodate the seller's needs? If you can, we actually closed yesterday on a house. It was multiple bids. It was highly competitive. And the reason I think that my buyer was able to secure this was she said, She's renting month to month. She could be completely flexible. The seller, they were pregnant. They had to find a house, a bunch of things, and she got the house, and she was flexible. So that's an important term. And also, are you having an inspection? We do encourage an inspection. Is it contingent? Meaning, if the inspection is bad, if something comes up, you know, the deal is not, first of all, the offer is not binding anyway until you sign a contract, but are you making the offer contingent on the inspection and contingent on the mortgage? Sometimes in highly competitive situations where there's multiple bids, the buyer will decide, because they're comfortable in waiving some of the contingencies. Some buyers will say, I'm going to have an inspection, but my inspection is for informational purposes only. The message they're giving to the seller is, I'm not going to have an inspection and then come back and try to renegotiate the price that we just agreed to in the accepted offer. And this strengthens your offer. Also, if it's very competitive and you know that there's, 5 to 10 offers on a house, if you're comfortable, you might waive your mortgage contingency. What this is going to do is take the risk away from the seller and put it into the buyer, saying that I want this house so much that I'm willing to give up my down payment, but we'll talk about that later. I don't want to jump ahead. So that's what the contingencies are. And when you have your offer, you submit the offer, and hopefully it's accepted, which is very, very exciting. I love, especially working with first-time home buyers, when they have their first accepted offer. It's such a nervous, exciting time. And the first thing that you want to do is a realtor will give you a list of inspectors if you don't have your own. Most people don't. And you'll want to have arrange and schedule the inspection within 24 to 48 hours of an accepted offer, because a seller is still showing that house to other interested buyers until you have signed a contract, which is fair. So you want to schedule the inspection really soon. You want to choose an inspector that it will do a full inspection. That includes a radon testing, where they leave the radon cans in the basement and they come back 48 hours later to pick them up and test the radon. They're going to check for termites. In some cases, they even have a little tool in their car where they can run it. I forgot what it's called. You see people doing it at the beach, looking for metal or jewels under the sand. They do that over the property to see if there's any oil tank that's possibly there. It's a deeper dive into the home. Now, the purpose of your inspection is to find things that you couldn't see during the showing. In other words, if you look at a house and there's a crack on a window, you're not trying to negotiate the crack on the window after the inspection, because you could see it with your eye. You're looking for things that you can't see with your eye. We recently just negotiated an appliance, an expensive Sub-Zero oven, or I think actually it was a Viking, and one of the burners didn't work. Now, we wouldn't have known that when we were looking at the house. That's something that came up during the inspection in the deeper dive. So these are the items that you're negotiating. After you get through the negotiation of any items that were found that you wanted to be repaired, you tell your real estate agent that you are prepared to move forward to contract. At this point, you are going to ask your realtor, if you don't have a real estate attorney, for a list of real estate attorneys that they recommend.
So getting to contract, this is getting real. This means that you know a lot about the property and you've decided to move forward. So you've selected your attorney, and the seller will also have an attorney, and those two attorneys will be working together to put together a draft of the contract based on the contingencies and terms that you put in, that you have agreed upon. And after that draft is fairly well done, the buyer is you will go in and meet with, or you will probably virtually meet with your attorney to review the contract and just make sure that it's meeting all of the specifications that you desire. And then at that point, after the final contracts are drawn up, you will sign the contract and put down your 10% earnest money deposit. So that's 10% of the purchase price. And earnest money means that it will be going into a earnest account in the selling attorney's office, and they'll be holding on to that until closing. And so after you have the executed contract where both the seller and the buyer have signed that, that's going to be a document that's going to be very helpful to you. You're going to go ahead and meet with your mortgage broker if you're getting financing, and you can go ahead and submit your mortgage application and lock in your interest rate, which right now we're at historical low interest rates. So it's a really favorable time to be looking for homes right this moment. And so now you're in what's called the contract period, or what we also call pending. And so now you have a binding agreement. So you don't have to worry about other buyers coming in and swooping in and trying to take the house from you. You are locked into the house. So you're at a period where you might not be speaking as much with your realtor, although it is still important to keep in touch on important milestones, but you'll be finalizing your financing, and the seller will be satisfying any inspection agreement contingencies if there were any. So what does it mean to finalize your financing? Well, you've submitted your mortgage application, and the bank is going to go ahead and set up a home appraisal. And you'll be helping take care of any paperwork or additional information the bank might need in order to get a mortgage commitment. So that process can take about 45 days if you are getting a mortgage.
And just so you know, later we are going to discuss how the changes that COVID-19, the changes, in a walkthrough, in an inspection, in a showing, and the rules. But so finally, the closing, the final walkthrough. So the final walkthrough means the house is empty, the seller has moved out, and it's in broom clean condition. Basically, you're going back into the house and you're checking that everything that worked during the inspection still works. And anything that was negotiated after the inspection has been repaired. So you are testing the plumbing and the electric. You're literally going to turn on the appliances, check the burners, turn on the dishwasher, the washer, the dryer. You're going to check the hot water. You're going to check the bathroom, tub, flush the toilet. You're going to do everything. Then you're going to walk around the house and make sure there wasn't damage. Sometimes there could be a storm. Check the basement if there's any water that came between the time of the inspection and now. And things like that. It's a very, again, it's very nerve-wracking and exciting. Now, I'll just mention, I had believe it or not, two walkthroughs yesterday. Both because of COVID-19. I'll just take this moment to tell you how we did those. I went and unlocked the door. I turned on all the lights. I opened as many doors as I could to minimize what they had to touch. Then I got in my car in the driveway and FaceTimed, and the buyers went in and they did the walkthrough, and I was on FaceTime and I guided them if they had questions. It took a little bit longer. It was actually really thorough because of those circumstances. We were taking our time. It was very thorough, and it was absolutely fine. So it's certainly, closings are certainly happening. Walkthroughs are certainly happening during this time. So a closing, who attends a closing? Well, leading up to the closing, your attorney, you're going to be speaking to your attorney a lot the week before the closing. Your attorney is going to tell you how many checks to bring, who to write them out to, how much, what amounts, and basically everything you should bring to the closing. This is where everyone comes together. Your mortgage broker comes to the closing, your attorney, the sellers come, the seller's attorney. You get to sit down and speak to the sellers and ask them any questions about the house you were dying to ask them. And it usually takes place in the bank attorney's office. And you leave the closing with the keys to your new house. And hopefully a bottle of champagne or a nice gift from your realtor.
That's right. Yay! And the house is yours. So as Laura mentioned, we're just going to touch base. We are in a new world, but we have transitioned very quickly as a real estate community, and almost everything today is now virtual. So you can literally buy a home without ever stepping inside of it if you so choose. And we make it pretty easy, but of course, every buyer is different and they want to do it differently. But initially, we do video conferencing with the realtor and the buyer to go over your wish list and set up the community talk. And then eventually, when it's time for those community tours, of course, we do those in the Bluetooth community tours, as I was describing earlier. Inspections are allowed to happen in person, and you can decide, do you want to do that virtually, or would you like to have, if there's two buyers, usually only one buyer is allowed to attend, but you can FaceTime with the other buyer and go through all that. And again, inspecting a home is where you're going to be learning the ins and outs of the house, so it is nice to attend that if you can. And the appraisal. So I mentioned that your mortgage company will be arranging one. In the past, the appraisers would go into the property, and in some cases, they're still doing that where the lights and all the doors have been opened, and we do have a COVID questionnaire where we find out if anybody's been sick before they come into the house. And in some cases, they're doing drive-by and even desk appraisals, as they're calling them. And the final walkthrough, as Laura mentioned, usually the buyer is in the house doing the final walkthrough and the realtor can be in the car. But I actually have a closing right now where my buyers have decided to stay in Virginia. So I'll be doing the walkthrough and FaceTiming with them. So you can do it a lot of different ways. And the closings, there's many different ways we're doing closings today. As Laura mentioned, you know, in pre-COVID, closings were often in person with all of those parties present. However, now we are doing virtual closings. Again, I had one of my closings, the buyer's in Virginia. They're not going to come. They've arranged power of attorney that has to be approved by your bank. That's usually the biggest hurdle. So you can do it virtually, or they're also doing what's called curbside, so that the title company is driving back and forth and the attorneys are driving back and forth getting signatures from the sellers and the buyers, just passing the papers through the window of the car. So there's lots of different ways to do it. And of course—
I could just interrupt you for one moment. I just recently had a closing. The sellers don't have to, it's very easy for the sellers to give over the power of attorney. It's the buyers, if they're getting a mortgage, that's the only people that may have to be in the car. It's basically all virtual now, except for the buyers, because they have to have a wet signature for the title.
Unless the bank approves it.
Right. Okay, good. Yeah.
Yes. And of course, if you are going in to see a home, so there's two different ways you can see a home. You can, if the house is vacant, the buyers have been able to get into homes, or if the seller agrees, you can also have a seller guided tour. So in all of the cases where you are getting into the home, we ask that the buyers don't touch anything, you know, that they're wearing masks and booties on their feet, which they can dispose of after the showing. And of course, washing the hands, as we all know, is one of the most important things. So that is what we are doing. Some examples of what we're doing today during the coronavirus.
Okay. So I have the chat. People have been chatting. We have no questions yet in the Q&A box. Now is the time. I hope if you have any questions, please feel free to type this into the Q&A box and Jen and I will answer it.
And after this webinar, we will send you guys the slides so that you can use them as a reference guide. So thank you again for coming today.
Yes. So it looks like we don't have any questions. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was helpful to you, and I wish you luck in your home search.
Yes, and if we forgot anything or a question comes up later, here's our information. So feel free to reach out to one of us.
Okay, Martin's asking a question, but in the chat box, but that's okay. I can still see it. Are prices in Westchester rising? I think prices are staying where they are because the demand, there's two reasons why it's a good time to buy. The first one is obvious. Everyone knows interest rates are at an all-time low. So if you're renting somewhere, you're better off, if you know you want to buy a house, you're better off locking in a very low interest rate right now. And instead of worrying that your rent might go up in the future with all that's going on. And there is higher demand for people that want to get out of the city. That, Jen, you were mentioning this in our intro.
Sure.
You
Well,
wanted to
I
say
want to point out, and I have a chart, but I'm not going to pull it up right now. We actually have seen in southern Westchester County in particular, a large dip in the number of homes on the market. And that's been over the last 4 years. So inventory is, and I'm sure you've heard this, you know, in various press on real estate, inventory is down across the United States and in particular in Westchester County. So, you know, supply and demand does come into play in terms of housing prices. However, as Laura mentioned earlier, condition is a very important piece to that. So if you are willing to do work, you probably can get a better deal in Westchester County right now than if you wanted a home in great condition.
That's absolutely true. And also price. So right now in Westchester County, there is the range from 750,000 to about 1.2. If the house falls into that price point and is in excellent condition, what does that mean? It means it has new kitchens that are probably white cabinets, it has updated bathrooms, and it has central air. If all of that criteria is met, there's not a lot of houses like that on the market right now. The price is going to go up. There's probably going to be multiple bids. However, if it's a house that needs a little bit of work, I was reading an article also, there are some people that may have lost work or need to relocate because of COVID. In that situation, those sellers need to sell. That is a situation where you might get a house at a very good price. But I think overall, the real estate market in Westchester County is very strong because of supply and demand. There's not a lot on the market, and people do want to leave the city right now, and interest rates are so low. Oh, Jenna Marks has a question. Do you envision the market getting better for buyers given the economy, or worse for a particular market because of all of the city dwellers looking to get out?
So I'd love to touch base on that. Just to finish, and it's kind of tied to Martin's question as well, supply and demand again. Right now, there's been a pause both for buyers and for sellers. So there's fewer buyers in the marketplace right now, although we are seeing national statistics are showing more activity on Zillow and more activity in actual appointments across the United States and in our area. But it's kind of similar to what happens every year. Starting in February, the buyers have been waiting all winter for the spring market. And so they come in and there's a lot of competition with a lot of buyers in the market that drives the price up. So of course, because of coronavirus, our spring market is delayed. So what we're gonna see right now is our spring market is gonna become a summer market. And the buyers are gonna start coming in. Usually the peak number of homes on the market in Westchester County is in the month of April, typically. So because of coronavirus, that's pushing that out 2 to 3 months. So hopefully, buyers, you can expect to see more homes coming on the market if we're allowed to get out of, if real estate becomes an essential business again, that could put us into, say, July. I think there will be a lot of summer pressure because people who are moving typically want to move for schools and they'll want to get in before September. So we'll probably see a lot of buyers in the marketplace in June and July. So if you are in the market, now might be a good time to start seriously looking. There won't be as much competition.
I do want to mention that because of COVID, some buyers are nervous to come out and go into people's homes, and they're just nervous in general. So there may not be as many buyers as there would have been last year, which means less competition when bidding on a house. So that's another way of looking at it. There may not be as many offers on a particular property as there would have been because some people are nervous to get out right now. So it's a good time to be in the buyer's
time's
market.
going to tell for sure. We're going to know a lot in the next month, I think.
Yes. And we'll know more when we know when schools are opening and if they're opening. So this is all relevant to the real estate market. Do we have any more questions? And thank you, by the way, Jenna and Martin, for your questions.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's it. I think that's it for the questions, and those were very good questions.
Absolutely.
Well, if you think of questions afterwards, please feel free to email or call Jen or myself. And we are here
to inform. We're here to inform and be a resource.
This is fun. This was our first webinar ever, so we're stretching ourselves to learn new skills to go with the new real estate market. Oh, there's one new message. Let me see what that is. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jen. You're welcome. Thanks for joining us very much.
Thank you very, very much. And stay healthy, everybody.
Yes, stay healthy and hope to hear from you soon.
Yes. We look forward to hearing from you.
Take care. Bye-bye.